I don't know who's watching this, and honestly, I don't want to know. I'm not recording this to become famous, and I'm definitely not here to tell some creepy story for entertainment. I'm recording because I owe people an apology. I laughed at the warning. I told everyone it was another broken emergency alert, another government mistake that would disappear by morning. I was wrong. If this video somehow reaches you, listen carefully. Whatever you do, don't pause it just to check outside your window. I know you're curious. I was too. Curiosity is exactly how this begins. If your phone recently screamed with an emergency alert telling you to stay away from your windows, then I'm sorry. It means you've already been noticed. You probably think someone is playing a prank, or maybe your city accidentally sent out a test notification. That's exactly what I believed. I even joked about it online. My last post is probably still there, although I wouldn't recommend looking for it. Some things shouldn't be searched twice. I'm not going to tell you what I saw outside. Not yet. The moment you understand what it looked like, you'll start looking for it without realizing it. That's how it finds people. There are rules, and breaking the first one cost me everything I had. So listen instead. If you've seen one standing outside your house, don't tell anyone in the comments. Don't describe it. Don't argue with people who say you're lying. They already know where you live. They don't need your address. They only need to know that you've seen them. I know how impossible that sounds. I thought the same thing until I watched my neighborhood disappear one house at a time while the government insisted nothing unusual was happening. I'll explain what happened, but first you need to understand why the government lied. Because none of this started tonight. It started the moment every phone in the city vibrated at exactly 11:47 p.m. The night began so normally that I can still remember the little details better than the important ones. Rain tapped against the roof in a slow, steady rhythm. The television muttered quietly in the background while some forgettable late-night sitcom played to an audience that laughed on cue. My phone sat charging on the kitchen counter. Dinner dishes were still in the sink because I'd promised myself I'd wash them before bed. Outside, the streetlights reflected off wet pavement, making the neighborhood look peaceful instead of lonely. Nothing felt wrong. Then every screen in the house turned red. The television cut to black before a piercing emergency tone exploded through the speakers. My phone vibrated so violently it slid across the counter. My laptop interrupted a movie with the exact same warning. Even the smart speaker in my living room spoke without anyone waking it. Every device. At the same second, the message filled every screen. Emergency alert. Do not look outside. Close all curtains immediately. Ignore any voices calling your name. Do not open your door under any circumstances. There was nothing else. No explanation. No weather report. No evacuation order. No mention of terrorists, chemical spills, escaped prisoners, or military attacks. Only rules. I remember staring at the screen before laughing under my breath. What kind of alert is this? Almost immediately my phone exploded with notifications. Jake, tell me you're seeing this. Mom, is this another emergency test? Ashley, government got hacked LOL. Social media moved even faster. People were posting screenshots within seconds. Someone edited the alert into a meme before 2 minutes had passed. TikTok creators pointed cameras toward their windows, promising millions of viewers they'd prove the warning was fake. Live streams appeared everywhere. People pulled back their curtains. Some opened front doors. Others stood outside waving at empty streets. Comments flooded with laughing emojis. Nobody believed the warning. Not yet. My neighbor shouted across the rain from his porch. Hey, guess we're being invaded by ghosts now. A woman farther down the street yelled back. It's probably another internet prank. Someone actually applauded. Then, one by one, the live stream stopped. Not dramatically. Not with screaming. They simply ended. Frozen frame. Disconnected. Offline. Accounts stopped responding. Viewer counts vanished. At first, everyone blamed bad internet. Except the internet wasn't down. Messages still sent instantly. Videos still loaded. Music still streamed. The power never flickered once. Everything worked. Except information. News stations disappeared into static before returning with old reruns. Police scanner websites suddenly reported no active channels. Emergency radio frequencies went silent. It felt as though every official source had decided to stop talking at exactly the same moment. 15 minutes later, the emergency tone sounded again. Every device interrupted itself. The same rules appeared. But this time, the voice reading them sounded different. The first announcement had sounded calm, professional, government-trained. The second voice sounded exhausted, almost frightened. By the third broadcast, it sounded like someone struggling to breathe between sentences. Nobody else seemed to notice. Or maybe nobody wanted to admit they did. A new post appeared online. Only 3 words. I looked. Thousands of people replied within minutes. Questions, jokes, demands for proof. When I refreshed the page, the account was gone. Every comment disappeared with it, as though it had never existed. I leaned back in my chair and laughed again. There has to be a logical explanation. Still smiling, I stood up and walked toward the window. I stopped just short of the living room window, still smiling at how ridiculous the whole situation felt. The emergency alert had turned my quiet neighborhood into the internet's newest obsession, and I was convinced I'd have a funny story to tell in the morning. The curtains were already closed, just like the warning instructed, but there was a tiny gap where the fabric didn't quite meet. Barely an inch wide. I leaned forward and looked through it. At first, there was nothing. The rain had stopped. The street was completely empty. No passing cars. No neighbors. No movement. The silence felt unnatural, like someone had muted the entire world. Even the usual hum of distant traffic had disappeared. Only the streetlights remained, casting pale yellow circles across the wet pavement. One of them flickered, then another. Not all at once. One after another, like something was walking beneath them. I strained my eyes. Across the street, standing at the edge of my neighbor's driveway, was a figure. I don't know when it appeared. I couldn't remember seeing it a second earlier. It simply existed, perfectly still. It was impossibly tall, its head nearly level with the lower branches of an old oak tree. Its arms hung so low they almost touched the ground. It wore no clothes that I could recognize, only a shape darker than the night around it. Where its face should have been, there was nothing. No eyes, no mouth, no features at all. Yet somehow, I knew it was looking directly at me. A chill crawled up my spine. I told myself it had to be a trick of the light. A shadow, someone wearing a costume. Anything except what my instincts were screaming. I blinked. The figure was closer. Not across the street anymore. Now it stood beside my neighbor's mailbox. I froze. There had been no footsteps, no movement, no sound. I stared without breathing. Seconds passed. My eyes burned. Another blink. Closer again. Halfway across the road. Still perfectly motionless. As though reality itself was placing it nearer every time my eyes closed. The emergency tone exploded through the house again. I nearly fell backward. Every screen lit up simultaneously. This time the message wasn't the same. The red letters slowly appeared across every display. We saw you look. My blood turned to ice. The words remained for only a few seconds before disappearing into static. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Silence. Not complete silence. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Too close to the microphone. I whispered hello. The breathing stopped. The call ended. Another unknown number called immediately. Then another. Then another. Every time I answered, only breathing, never a voice. The television suddenly switched itself on. Static covered the screen. The image struggled to form. For just a fraction of a second, I saw the same tall figure standing much closer than before. Then the screen went black. Outside, motion lights began activating one after another down the entire street. Not because anything was moving, because something was already there. My security camera app sent a notification. Motion detected. I opened the live feed. Every camera displayed the same message. Signal lost. The backyard. Offline. Front porch. Offline. Garage. Offline. Every camera had failed at exactly the same time. I heard frantic scratching beneath the kitchen table. My dog, Murphy, was curled into the smallest ball I'd ever seen, trembling so violently his tags rattled against the floor. He refused to look toward the windows. The birds outside had vanished too. Not flown away. Vanished. The trees stood perfectly still, empty of every sound that should have belonged there. My phone rang again. This time it was Jake. I answered instantly. His voice shook so badly I barely recognized him. I looked too. What did you see? I don't know. I don't think you're supposed to know. There was a long pause. Then he whispered something I'll never forget. Whatever you do, don't blink while looking at it. The call disconnected. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, finally understanding what the emergency alert had never actually said. It never claimed the creatures would hurt us. It never explained why we couldn't look outside. Because the warning was never meant to protect people. It was meant to protect whatever was waiting beyond the glass. I looked at the clock. 2:13 a.m. 3 slow knocks echoed from my front door. The knocking came again. 3 slow taps. Always the same rhythm. Not loud enough to sound desperate. Not soft enough to ignore. Each knock landed with impossible precision, as though whoever stood outside knew exactly how hard to strike the door without breaking the silence surrounding the house. Murphy whimpered beneath the kitchen table, refusing to come out. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stay away from the entrance, yet I couldn't stop staring at it. The porch light shone through the frosted glass beside the door, but there was no shadow. Just another knock. Then a voice. Honey, open the door. Every muscle in my body locked. It was my mother, not someone who sounded like her. It was her voice. The gentle warmth. The slight rasp she'd developed after years of smoking before finally quitting. Even the way she stretched the word honey, exactly as she always had. My mother had died 6 years earlier. I backed away from the door until my shoulders hit the wall. Another knock. My hands are cold. Silence. Then, please let me inside. My chest tightened. Memories I'd buried for years came rushing back with brutal clarity. I wanted to answer. I wanted to believe that somehow she was standing on the other side of that door. Then she said something she never would have said. I miss being alive. The words sounded correct. The emotion didn't. It was like hearing an actor repeat lines from a script without understanding what they meant. The knocking stopped. A new voice replaced it. Dude, it's me. Jake. His breathing sounded frantic. I got away. Just opened the door. I stepped closer before catching myself. Jake never called me dude. He always said my name. Always. The voice continued. Hurry. They're behind me. Then, after a pause, I require your assistance. I frowned. Who says that? Not Jake. Not ever. The sentence sounded human, but not natural. As if something had learned language from books instead of people. Another pause. Another voice. My little sister. She laughed exactly the way she had when we were kids. Come on. Stop playing. Tears filled my eyes. For one impossible second, I forgot every warning. Then she repeated the same strange sentence. I require your assistance. My blood ran cold. The exact words. Every voice. Every person. Different memories. Different emotions. The same unnatural phrase. It wasn't becoming them. It was copying them. Poorly. Whatever waited outside understood our voices. It understood our relationships. But it didn't understand us. It could imitate. It couldn't be human. The emergency tone shattered the silence once more. Every light in the house dimmed. Every screen glowed red. This broadcast was different. The voice sounded exhausted, like someone reading words they wished had never been written. If you are receiving this message, containment has failed. My heart stopped. This phenomenon has occurred before. Old photographs flashed across the television. Black and white streets. Abandoned farmhouses. Entire neighborhoods with every window covered. The images changed rapidly. Dates. Small towns I'd never heard of. Each one marked with the same word. Removed. The voice continued. Every 30 to 40 years, they return. Newspaper headlines appeared. Missing county population. State maps revised. Local records destroyed. Old VHS footage replaced the headlines. Families boarding up windows. Emergency broadcasts recorded onto damaged tapes. Military checkpoints surrounding places that no longer existed on modern maps. Government documents flashed by too quickly to read completely, but one sentence lingered just long enough. Survivors retain memory. All official records must be erased. My stomach turned. This wasn't a new disaster. It was an old one deliberately forgotten. The broadcaster took a shaky breath before speaking again. If it speaks, do not answer. The screen filled with static. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then one final sentence appeared in white letters. They can only enter if you acknowledge them. The television shut itself off. The house became silent again. Outside, the knocking had stopped. I stared at the front door, trying to convince myself I hadn't heard any of it. Trying to believe exhaustion had finally broken my mind. Without thinking, without even realizing I'd spoken, I whispered one tiny word. What? Silence. A metallic click echoed through the hallway. Then, the front door unlocked itself. The door never opened. It didn't swing inward. The handle didn't turn. The deadbolt remained locked exactly where I'd watched it stop. Yet something entered anyway. The air inside the hallway folded like heat rising from asphalt. The walls rippled, stretching and shrinking at the same time. My front door stayed closed, but the space beyond it no longer belonged to my house. Darkness poured through the cracks around the frame as though the night itself had learned how to breathe. Murphy bolted upstairs without making a sound. I wanted to follow him. Instead, I stood frozen. The hallway grew longer. Not by inches, by impossible distances. My bedroom, normally 10 steps away, now looked hundreds of feet down a narrow corridor that hadn't existed a moment earlier. Family photographs slid across the walls, rearranging themselves into memories I didn't recognize. The kitchen appeared where the living room should have been. The bathroom door opened into my garage. Every room still belonged to my house, yet none of them occupied the place they were supposed to. I stumbled toward the nearest window, desperate for something familiar. The neighborhood was gone. Outside wasn't my street anymore. Instead, I saw rows of abandoned apartment buildings beneath a gray sky. Rusted playground equipment swayed in wind I couldn't hear. A traffic light blinked endlessly over an empty intersection. Then, without warning, the view changed again. A snow-covered town, then a desert highway, then a dense forest. Every few seconds, another place, as though every window in my house had become a doorway into somewhere else. My laptop suddenly powered itself on. No internet browser. No desktop. Just a single document already open. Archive access granted. My hands shook as page after page loaded automatically. Government memorandums. Radio transcripts. Emergency management reports. One sentence appeared repeatedly. The original broadcasts did not originate from this agency. Another file explained what officials had spent decades hiding. The government never created the emergency alerts. They only repeated them. The first signals always appeared years before every incident, transmitted through abandoned military frequencies, forgotten weather stations, decommissioned emergency towers, and silent shortwave channels nobody monitored anymore. No sender, no source, only a voice. Every warning arrived decades before the event it described. Someone, or something, always knew first. I kept scrolling. Thousands of names. Entire neighborhoods listed as administratively relocated. Population records rewritten. Maps quietly updated. Missing towns explained away as clerical errors. Then I found survivor interviews. There weren't many. Most ended abruptly. Every testimony matched. Never look outside. Never answer familiar voices. Never acknowledge the watcher. The wording changed slightly. The meaning never did. A folder labeled Community Archives opened next. Screenshots from forgotten Reddit threads. Users describing impossible emergency alerts before deleting their accounts. Links to forums that no longer existed. Archived message boards discussing strange broadcasts recorded onto worn VHS tapes. Comments ended mid-sentence. Profiles vanished overnight. One username caught my attention. I recognized it. Weeks earlier, someone had commented beneath one of my own videos. They'd written only one sentence. If they ever tell you not to look outside, listen. I remembered laughing at it. Their account no longer existed. More usernames appeared. Some belonged to people I'd argued with online. Others had uploaded grainy analog recordings claiming emergency broadcasts contained hidden voices beneath the static. Every channel was gone. Every video removed. Yet the files remained inside this impossible archive, as though something had preserved evidence humanity kept trying to erase. Near the bottom of the directory sat one final document. Its title read, Observation Events. Most of the pages were blacked out. Only one paragraph remained visible. There is no known way to stop an observation event. Once acknowledged, the process continues until no witnesses remain. I stared at those words until they blurred together. Outside every window, different worlds continued drifting past. Inside my house, the walls kept breathing. The thing that had entered still hadn't shown itself. It didn't need to. Reality itself had become its shadow. Eventually, after what felt like hours trapped inside a home that no longer obeyed the rules of space or memory, the darkness beyond the windows began to fade. Morning finally arrived. Or, what looked like morning. When I finally opened my front door, sunlight spilled across the porch as though nothing had ever happened. The street looked ordinary again. Neighbors backed their cars out of driveways. Children laughed while walking toward the school bus. A mail carrier whistled as he crossed the sidewalk. Fresh rainwater shimmered beneath a bright blue sky. No broken windows. No police tape. No abandoned houses. No signs that reality had spent the entire night tearing itself apart. For a moment, I wondered if I'd dreamed everything. Then I asked my neighbor if he'd received the emergency alert. He frowned. What emergency alert? I showed him my phone. Nothing. No notification. No warning. No record that it had ever existed. The television stations laughed off rumors of mysterious broadcasts. Every news channel insisted the previous night had been completely uneventful. Government officials denied issuing any unusual alerts. Online searches returned nothing except ordinary emergency preparedness websites. The memes, live streams, and terrified posts I'd watched the night before had vanished without a trace. Even Jake stared at me like I was losing my mind. I never called you, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Every piece of evidence had disappeared, Except my memory. Days passed, then weeks. I tried convincing myself the nightmare was over. Until tonight. A few minutes before recording this video, my phone vibrated. Just once. No warning tone. No loud alarm. Only a single notification. The screen turned red. One sentence slowly appeared. They can see you through the window behind your screen. I haven't looked. I don't plan to. Neither should you. If you've watched this far, maybe you've already received the same alert. Maybe you haven't. Either way, don't make the mistake I made. Curiosity isn't what kills you. It's what notices you. Before I end this recording, I need you to tell me something. What would you have done? Do you think the government actually knew the truth, or were they just repeating warnings from something they couldn't understand? Have you, or someone you know, ever received a strange emergency alert that nobody else remembered? If there are other survivors, they'll find this video. Maybe they'll recognize pieces of what I've said. Maybe they'll connect it to older cases. Or maybe this recording disappears before sunrise, just like everything else. If your phone buzzes tonight, don't check it near a window. Distorted emergency tone. End of recording.